Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where we talk all things Commander. And this week, we are talking about the top mistake cards of 2024. Whatever that means. Cards we don't like, cards we think are bad for the game, etc., etc. The mistake cards or worst cards of 2024. Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Nothing I like more than complaining about Magic cards.
That's our forte. Tomer, Budget Commander, what's up?
It's said that Magic players actually like complaining more about Magic than they like playing it. And I tend to agree.
Krim, the Asian Avenger. Krim doesn't complain much, actually. He only complains about green, actually.
I look, I had to dig deep on this year because I actually didn't have much to complain about this year.
I mean, Krim's
Word,
general
he just
stance
wrote
is there
green
are
on
no
the
mistake
sheet.
cards. That's his general stance. So we had to squeeze some cards out of him to get something going on.
Is it like there's no mistakes, there's only happy accidents? Is that the Krim takes the
guess
Bob Ross approach?
surprisingly, I mean, look, this year I didn't think there was that many bad cards compared to last year. So last year was a terrible place.
All right. Before we get into today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Guard, premium protection for your trading cards. You can use the same gaming accessories as us, like playmats, deck boxes, and sleeves from Ultimate Guard. So check out ultimateguard.com. And also Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. You can skip all the typing, time, and work associated with buy listing. And their curated service lets you send in as many cards as you want with buy list value of $1 or more, and you pay just a 5% service fee. You can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards and pay only 2%. You can get a detailed report and fast payment once your order is processed. You can get 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting today's show. And we're going to do some time traveling. We're on holiday schedule, so we are recording at random times. We have an Ultimate Guard comment of the week. When this goes up, this should be from 2 weeks ago. The episode was card packages, cards you should play together. Top comment, Nick QB5Wu. The irony of Richard coming up with a jank artifact ramp package to avoid playing Mana Rocks because they die to farewell.
Yeah.
I know the comments think I'm just like farming them for engagement, but I wonder if the comments are farming me and they purposely misunderstand the whole point of everything.
I feel like it's a
All the
symbiotic
artifacts
relationship.
flip into land, so you're supposed to flip them before the farewell comes down, therefore guaranteeing their survival, okay? In case, you got me, you baited me, okay? If people are actually misunderstanding anything, okay? The artifacts don't stay artifacts. That's the point.
We'll do a round 2 on rain packages in a future podcast. How about that?
Oh my god! I actually seriously wonder if people even watch our Commander Clash. I'm like, who listens to the podcast because they're like, oh, Richard talks about these cards and never plays them. I'm like, hello? Do you watch me play every week? I have played O'Hare Accidental like so many times. I'm ramming it down your guys' throats, and I play it again and again. And they're like, oh, he's just trolling us. I'm like, no, I play it, and it does work every time.
Debatable, but you do definitely. You're not trolling. You definitely sincerely believe everything you say.
All right.
Totally
Rant aside, they got me. They baited me. Okay, so let's go. Let's go into today's surely not controversial podcast called Mistake Cards of 2024. And I guess I'm gonna kick things off. Can I start with another package? Because this is a general package, and I wrote down in our sheet here every non-basic land they've made this year. Because they have like super power crept non-basics, right? Like the ones that come to mind are Urza's Cave, Shifting Woodland, Sunken Palace, Talon Gates of Madara. Like all of these cards are insane. But not only have they like broken all the non-basics, they've given you ways to fetch them with ease. So we had Scampering Surveyor, which gets a cave. We have Sowing Mycospawn, which made our top list from last week, to get these lands for you. And this is a mistake. We've already banned Glacial Chasm out of our meta. We've already banned Field of the Dead out of our meta. But lands are not touchable. right? Like you're not allowed to mess with lands. And the fact that they're power creeping lands so hard and allowing you to tutor them up and put them on the battlefield, like this is going south really, really fast. And like, I don't know, man. Like they will never normalize land destruction. So it's going to be very hard to interact with this. And it's like making everything emblems, right? Like there's this thing you can't touch. You shouldn't put effects onto these.
Mhm.
And Wizards have decided they need to sell the other 30 to 40 slots in your deck, which are lands. And they're power creeping the heck out of everything. All your ramp doesn't need basic types anymore. So I think we're going down the path of like super power creep, and we're just getting green stronger and stronger too, because green is the greatest benefactor of this power creep because they can easily tutor out all of these lands at will. And your land tutor package is enormous if you really want to build one, right? Like you can get a land for like every case. So I don't know what you guys think about this. I mean, Tomer is a basic believer. I don't know how much longer you can hold out because the power divide is like growing like with every second. What do you think, Tomer?
So, like, I definitely agree. I think they definitely power crept non-basic lands a lot significantly this year, and I am a little bit worried about that. And I also agree that it's a situation which you can't really rewind or print answers to in an effective manner because they've already said that like blood moon effects, ruination effects, these type of things that outright punish you for running non-basics are just like off the table because people don't like playing against them. At least casual players don't like playing against them. So I think what I hope for in next year is I hope first of all they slow down on making very powerful non-basics that are like catch-all, like generically powerful. But I would also really appreciate if they printed more powerful payoffs for running basics. Like there are already quite a few powerful ones. Like I mentioned before, Traverse Outlands, for example, if you're in a Go Tall deck, you can ramp out like for 5 mana, you could ramp out like 8-10 basics for a single spell. That's amazing. Your Go Wide, you have like Harvest Season, does the same thing. Kodama of the West Tree for modified decks. Those are fantastic fantastic reasons to run basic lands. I think there should be more of them. And hopefully also non-green ways of having payoffs for basics too, because I just listed 3 very powerful options, but they're all green. So I think that's probably the way to balance it out, where you'd start thinking like, okay, well, I really want to run these powerful basic payoffs, or do I really want to focus on the non-basics? And I want there to be actual, like, more of a conflict than there is currently.
Cool. I don't know if I agree. My worry would be, isn't that just going to make ramp in general even stronger? And isn't that one of the issues we have with Commander? Like, I imagine if you want to make basics better, if you printed, whatever, 5 mana ramp 4 basics, or like in Open the Way, something that was putting an equivalent amount of basics on the battlefield, I play that card like crazy because it's insane to put 4 lands on the battlefield for a cheap price. But then we just have more Open the Ways, and the green players get even further ahead. I wonder if they could do it with card like Floodgates, Tomer. You love Floodgate. Can we do it with basics with other cards? Not actually Floodgate, because Floodgate is horrible. But things like that. Can we reward people for having basics on the battlefield with non-ramp cards?
Yeah,
that's
like
something I could get
Flow of
behind.
knowledge.
Like number of basic
Bounce spells.
swamps you control, number of basic whatever you control. I think that is definitely a way to do it. I want more of that. Like there are those things in the game, but I want to see more of it because these are old. Like most of these cards are very old. Like it feels like they haven't been keeping up with that as much as they've been keeping up with non-basic love.
You know what I want to answer this problem is I want more land hate that doesn't actually stop people from using their lands. I think Blood Sun is what comes to mind, which is like all lands lose all abilities except for mana abilities. What if we had like colorless versions of that or cheaper versions of that? Like, is there a way we can make it so you're not going to pop off with all these utility lands, but you're still going to be able to play the game of Magic? You can still cast your spells, because I think that's what we need, right? Like, we don't want lands to get blown up because people feel sad and it's not socially acceptable. But we also don't need people to just like dominate the game with all these utility lands. So maybe there's a way they can print some hate cards that still let you play the game, but don't let you Shifting Woodlands and Urza's Cave and do all the like busted utility land stuff that I love.
Seth, you're towing the line. I mean, at this point, like a Blood Sun, like in a Super Blood Sun, why not just Blood Moon? Right? Like those are almost the same to this, like to one person. Yes, I know Blood Moon messes with your mana, but you're towing the line of what is already going to be perceived as stacks anyways, right? So why half measure it and just fully like let the lands get blown up? I personally think just more price of progress. I just think more price of progress effects, like actual closers. Yes, you could have all the resources. You could play all the Magic you want to play, as a matter of fact. But like, I literally just think more price of progresses in the year of 2025 will be what pulls us back.
I don't know if
I
that
asked
makes
the
that either.
casuals. It wrecks the casuals that are not taking advantage of the utility. Like, okay, if you play 18 Shifting Woodlands and died of Price of Progress, you deserve it, right? But if you just played like 8 Gruul dual lands and then rolled over to Price of Progress, you are not happy about it, right? Because that was your mana fixing, and that was it. Yeah, like, you know, you're just playing dual lands.
The gain lands and guild gates and just like random, like you're just playing
you know,
the
like a
casual
2-color
janky
deck,
mana
you
base.
might fault them, but like that means every 3, 4, 5-color deck is unplayable, right? Because your mana base is like 5 of each basic if you don't want to get rolled by this, right? So like that's the problem with all of these kind of
But
hate pieces, like in Armageddon. Like, yeah, you know, you're gonna get the green player that ramped 18 times. You're also gonna get the guy that plays 28 basics in his land and like, you know, doesn't know what he's doing, right? Like that's kind of the problem. Like the strays that the casuals get from the hate cards is a lot, which is why Wizards like doesn't print them. So I like Seth's idea. You don't get the if you're just playing mana fixing, you don't get hit, right? But you do turn off all the utility. So that kind of works as long as it like is 1 mana and cycles like Confounding Conundrum, so you don't feel terrible for playing this card in, you know, a lower power pod. So I kind of like that.
That's my main criticism is like if this like a weak hate piece, then who's actually going to be running them? Like we have lots of weak hate pieces available to us in Commander, but nobody runs them because they're just too weak, right? Like unless it's actively
your card. Trouble in Pairs, because Trouble in Pairs is a hate piece. If you didn't know that, right? Trouble in Pairs says players cannot take extra turns. But who in their right mind would play this random hate piece that does kind of nothing? But if you drew 1 million cards off of it, off the backs of it,
right,
Tomer, would you like to elaborate on Trouble in Pairs and why you think it's a mistake card?
All right. So the Trouble in Pairs, we could call it a hate piece. It's actually just that thing is like, I would call it ribbon text. It's called fluff. You know, it's called flavor text or something that's just on the top of the card for some reason. Trouble in Pairs is a 4 mana white enchantment that we've seen basically every single Commander Clash episode. It says if an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. It's absolutely not relevant. The main the whole point of this card is actually just card draw. It says whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draws their second card each turn, casts their second spell each turn, breathes, blinks, interrupts somebody else, wrestles some jimmies, you draw a card. You draw a card if you take any game actions. If you play the game of Magic, the person who's running Trouble Pairs draws at least 1 card on your turn, possibly multiple cards on a single person's turn. In theory, this card could draw you 0 cards per turn cycle. You know, if your opponents aren't attacking you, if they're not drawing extra cards, and if they're not casting more than 1 spell, in theory, this draws 0 cards. It's a do-nothing enchantment. In practice, though, I've seen it on Commander Clash, and I've seen it in my regular play groups. I've seen it in LGSs. I've seen it everywhere. This card basically reads 4 mana, draw at least 3 cards per turn cycle, and without any actions on your part. No building around, no spending extra mana to do so. No, having sort of deck synergies or anything like forcing your opponents to draw extra cards or anything like that. No, you just sit there and for 4 mana, draw 3, draw even more than 3 sometimes in a single turn cycle. And the reason why I think this is a big design mistake is, first of all, like I'm all for white card draw, but I feel like this is a little bit much. And then second of all, I'm a big fan of powerful cards in Commander. However, I think powerful cards need to work to be powerful. You need to build around to be powerful. Like Return of the Wild Speaker, draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. That is not a
Use
lot
that
of
for
work for a
work.
green card, right? Not a lot of work, right? But at least you have to do something. You know, you have to do something. You have to have a big creature on. You have to have something else on the battlefield a little bit to draw
Tomer,
your
this
big
is
cards.
this is what you get when people poo-poo on everything. So you know what that card is, Tomer? It's called Secret Rendezvous. And an extremely powerful card drop. But everyone is like, oh, you need to work too hard. It's like so difficult to make this work in your advantage. So they slap Trouble in Pairs down, right? Where it's like you do nothing, draw infinity cards, right?
No,
Because
this is
all
called
of the
Welcoming
cards.
Vampire. Welcoming Vampire. Whenever a creature power 2 or less enters the battlefield, draw a card.
Too much work.
It's once per turn. Once per turn. Perfect. Beautiful card. Beautiful card design. So beautiful that they did it like 5 extra times. They keep printing more Welcoming Vampires. And the beauty of it is like it also entices you to possibly flash in, make tokens on your opponent's turn because then you could draw more cards. And then there's some build around. You could possibly draw 3 cards per turn cycle off a Welcoming Vampire.
People
That's
don't build
amazing.
around. Like, so
It is
if
a
you go
build around.
outside the Clash meta for a second, most people say white is trash. White can't draw cards, which is why Wizards keeps printing the most broken white card draw you've ever seen, right? They're like, here, have first white can't ramp, have Smothering Tide. So easy, right? Okay, here, have Esper Sentinel. Oh, white still sucks. Have Trouble in Pairs. Guess what? White still sucks, right? But, right? You have like a million Welcoming Vampire effects, right? You can draw all the cards you want in white, right? You have Secret Rendezvous, you have Cut a Deal, but they all kind of require like finesse to use, right? Like it's not like in your face draw a million cards. And people, I don't know, they don't catch on. Like I gave you guys the ramp package in red. It requires work to make work. And people are like, oh no, it's garbage. It's terrible. You know, it can never be done. I'm like, this is how Magic works, right? You need to play around what's printed and break them, and then they work way better than Wizards ever intended, right? But most people don't like to do that, and here we are, and we're gonna get another Trouble in Pairs because people still think white sucks, so they gotta keep pushing it, right? Because white has Trouble in Pairs. T-Pro wasn't enough. We needed like a whole million other like broken protection spells. Like this is I don't know how Wizards fixes this, right? Like we have so many good cards, but they keep pushing it.
Yeah, that's kind of my worry. Like a year ago, we had the One Ring, which is also an absurd card advantage engine that you can play in any deck. And then we got Trouble in Pairs. We've had Ristic Study forever. Like I feel like they're going to keep printing these because they know they're going to be able to sell sets and they're going to be very powerful. And like Richard said, they're kind of easy mode. Like you don't really have to think too much or brew too much to get value out of a Trouble in Pairs. A Secret Rendezvous, you got to have like kind of a higher level of thinking about the format, I think, to even put it in your deck to begin with. And then you have to like be willing to do a lot of work to actually like get value out of it. So I think we're going to keep seeing these cards. And while I agree that it's a mistake card, I just don't know how this problem's going to end. I think it's like a mistake that we're going to keep seeing year after year after year. And I don't know.
You ban it. You ban it, and then people you don't print more of it. That's how you get rid of it, right? Like Trouble Pairs can't be the new bar for white card draw, right? Like that's insanity. You just say, hey, this was a mistake. We're not doing more of it. Like that's a way to actually curb this.
I don't know if we're allowed to ban cards though, Tomer. Remember what happened a couple months ago when we banned literally the most broken card in the format that everyone knows should be banned?
You could even just say it's banned because it has stolen artwork.
Yeah,
okay? You can even use
out.
an excuse.
Out.
You can say,
well, okay,
you can say because it has stolen art, we have to ban it. I'm so sorry, everybody.
Let me ask you this then, Tomer. If they banned Trouble in Pairs, would it actually solve anything with the One Ring and Ristic Study and all these other engines existing? Like, does just banning a single one of those, or like, I would say from my perspective, I probably play Trouble in Pairs as much as anyone on Commander or Clash. If you ban Trouble in Pairs, that just means the One Ring shows up in more decks in the place of Trouble in Pairs, or the next best option, which is equally as, like on the same level of power.
The One Ring is
this argument grinds my gears so much because everybody always says, like, when I said, like, for example, you could ban Mana Crypt, and banning Mana Crypt would be better for the format, and ban Jeweled Lotus and stuff too. People will say, well, actually, there's always going to be the best thing, right? So if you just ban Mana Crypt, I'll switch to Mana Vault. Well, guess what? Mana Vault is not close to as good as Mana Crypt. And even if you thought Mana Vault was great, you'd be running both anyway, right? So okay, so you run Trouble, you're not replacing Trouble in Pairs with the One Ring. You're running both, Seth. I've seen your deck lists, all right? You run both of them.
Sometimes.
So now we removed one of them. And if like Trouble in Pairs, if there's like, I don't know, the next best thing for White's card draw is whatever, the gap between Trouble in Pairs and that next best thing is so colossal. I'm okay that being the next best thing, you know? I've never bought into that argument. It's like, oh, I'll just replace it with Fidelity. It always has to be something good. It's no, this thing is so much higher than anything else. So
Crib,
just
I
get rid of
I
it.
got a question for you. 4 mana enchantment that draws cards over time. What is the appropriate number of cards it should draw?
Honestly, like over time.
Over time. So not burst, right? Like not all at once, right? Because all at once is kind of capped, right? But this, like Trouble in Pairs is theoretically slow, right? It has to untap, go again, right? So how many cards would we need to put this at for it to be considered, a fair use of a card? And I guess the closest one, or not a close one, but a common one that we see is Phyrexian Arena, which is 3 mana, and it draws a card every turn. And you can math out how long your games last. Right? If your games last 8 turns or something, right? Then on turn 3, you would draw 4, 5, 6, 7. You would draw 4 cards, right? So that's the baseline. So what would a 4 mana spell do?
I think a 4 mana spell in Commander probably should be drawing like somewhere between like 8, maybe 10 cards. Within like I guess overtime, right? Is what I'd probably look at. Especially since it's a slow bleed, right? And I think Arena's bad, right?
Isn't that Trouble in Pairs? Are you really?
Yeah, I was
going
to
to
say
10
that sounds
cards?
about right.
Isn't that about
if you
Trouble in
played on
Pairs
turn
numbers?
4, go to turn 8.
It draws
might
at
be
least
around
3
there.
per turn cycle. I don't know.
I'm so curious, like, what happens when I'm not on a Commander Clash season? Because like y'all are just
we Trouble in Pairs each other when you were on too, Crib. You know
yeah,
how
but
Trouble
I
in
don't
Pairs
think
works.
it ever
insane.
was like bad, right? For me, I don't think I was ever like, oh my god, like I don't think I've ever even cared enough about Trouble in Pairs. Like, it's a powerful card. It's very powerful, but I guess maybe because everything in Commander is like attached to 50 different like card advantage engines, right? So it's nice to have generic engines as well. Like as there are like because I feel in Magic or in Commander, there's so many like engines that reward you for being in like a go wide deck. So like let's say Enduring Curiosity, right? I think that it's great to have things that require specific synergies, and I think it's good to have like generic card advantage engines. And I think Trouble in Pairs is just a generic card advantage engine. And it doesn't really bother me that much because it's just, I don't know.
It's not generic. It's actually a stacks piece, but no one paid. It's like Ristic Study.
It's not a side
Like when
piece.
Wizards sat down, they're like, it's a stacks piece, right? It's going to keep people playing one, spell a turn, attack you with one creature and draw 1. But in reality, no one pays the tax, right? Like Ristic Study, right? So everyone just goes wild and you draw a bunch, but the justification is it's a stacks piece, I think.
But if
is
it's really
it
a
really,
stacks
though?
piece,
I mean,
then imagine
very
if everybody just
ineffective
played
stacks
one
piece.
spell a turn and didn't draw any extra cards. I think that's also a huge win. But it also it's kind of WotC's fault too, because like most 2024 Commander design is like whenever my legendary creature does a thing, I draw a card. Remember, like that's like 99% of Commanders these days that you'll see at a table is like whenever I do X, I draw a card. And if that is the case, then basically if you put down Trouble in Pairs, it says like I can't do X anymore until Trouble in Pairs is gone.
Yeah.
Oh, let me find my answer to it. Oh, I can't draw cards? Oh, that's gonna be kind of hard to find my answer to it then. Oops a daisy. Like that's what I hate about it.
I don't really understand why it gets a pass on the stacks aspect when like if I don't pay for Ristic Study, y'all are all over me about being a responsible Commander player. Don't play your mana rock. Play off curve all game. If you don't pay for an Esper Sentinel, everyone's like, oh, you should be playing around it. Why doesn't the table think of this in the same way? Like, why don't you just be responsible and like play around it? Like, if we're gonna use it for
just give you a hard time, Seth. No one's paying for crap.
Oh, okay.
Like I played
I
Surveyor
see.
Scope and Tomer ramped straight into it, right? And he's like, he could have just not ramped, right? If he played responsibly, he could just not ramp to turn on Surveyor Scope, but he's like, yeah, whatever. right? Like it's just
That's
I don't
what
know.
everyone
It's-
does. Yeah.
Usually, if we didn't harp on the pay for one, most people don't pay for one. I think like
The risk
Yeah.
accepting,
But it's not a. I guess maybe that's the thing here because usually a stacks piece is like, oh, you have to pay something. There's some kind of
Yeah.
cost you have to pay, and for this one it doesn't.
it's not
there
optional.
isn't really
It
one,
This is
right?
optional,
Like it's not
right?
optional.
Yeah.
So like I guess that's the reason why I don't view it as a stacks piece. It's just generic card engine, right? That's all it is. To me, it's the white Phyrexian arena, but like beefed up.
That's
my main
$4.
issue is like I like generic.
Sure.
I like generic engines because I think that's really helpful for every single thing. Like Welcoming Vampire. Like let's say I'm playing an Angel deck. Welcoming Vampire doesn't help me, So I want to have stuff for other types of shells in white. So I think that's good to have generic engines. My problem with it is like I have a Boros equipment deck. You would think that like I would have so many really great card draw engines, and I do. I have like Pure Steel Paladin. I have a bunch of good draw engines, but the best one in the entire deck would be Trouble in Pairs, and that's my issue with it. Is like all my thematic synergy payoffs, none of them compare to just like a Trouble in Pairs, which is like kind of depressing. I don't know. Like I have to dig really deep to find like card draw engines that like I have to build around to make them good to even get close to what Trouble in Pairs is doing by just paying 4 mana and then sitting. And no other build around required. That's what gets to me. I think once it reaches that level where it's beating synergy, I feel like that, and then it's like, oh no, that's an issue.
You can say that for the entirety of the format though, right? If you just go to the EDH rec top whatever, all the good cards are the ones that don't require synergy, right? Because synergy can be broken, right? Like synergy can be disrupted. So players just naturally gravitate towards them. And then you make like fake synergies that like the white synergy of play a small creature. Like your entire color plays small creatures, right? So like it triggers Welcoming Vampire no matter what. Same with green. Play big creatures. It's technically a synergy, but your entire color does it. So
no, but
I don't know.
The Angel, for example, you're playing Giada Angels, your Welcoming Vampires don't work anymore. But then you have like life gain payoffs, like the Well of Lost Dreams or whatever. You gain a bunch of life because Angels are all about life gain. You can draw X cards. I think those are wonderful. We should have more of those. Like more options.
We just don't play them.
But, like-
because they're not as good. Right?
Well, you have
It has to be
fill
like
out the rest of
Welcoming
the deck.
Vampire, but when you cast like a dog, you draw 2 cards. You know what I mean? Something like that, right? But they don't make cards that strong because when it works, it's like way too strong, right? And then the synergy ones are like so much hoopla to make work that you might as well just play Trouble in Pairs or something and call it a day. So you're right? Like, but there's some like fine tuning there, but like Well of Lost Dreams, like I'd rather just play Trouble in Pairs, man. Like that's a lot of work, right?
They can make other things like whenever you gain life, you draw a card, and only activate
that
once per
exists
turn.
on the new 4 mana Angel in Foundations, and I think that card's also good.
Yes,
Wait,
yeah,
for
yeah.
free?
Yeah, like whenever you gain life, you just draw.
Yeah,
a card.
you
Sure,
gotta
you
put,
get
you
one
put a
turn.
+1/+1
Put a
counter on
counter.
it, and you draw a card.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
I didn't know
that's
this card
excellent.
existed. This is great.
That's excellent. I want like, and like I think you can go powerful with synergy pieces. Like again, like Return of the Wild Speaker, draw cards equal to the number of power, just something, or like like do something in order to get that power.
So here's
Return to
the
the
thing,
Wild
Tomer.
Speaker
I'll-
synergy piece.
I'll wizard CEO you. Here's
Yeah,
why they
yeah,
don't
yeah.
do it, right? So here's why they don't make basic land payoffs. They're not trying to sell basic lands, right? So here's why they don't make super synergistic payoff pieces, because like if it's like mono white angel payoff, like that's like 1% of the population, 0.5% of the population or something, right? But if it's just white payoff, that's like 20% or something,
Yeah.
right? Like 1/5 of the players. So I think they just do it to sell cards, really. Right? Like the more narrow you get, the less, if we're just like, okay, only Boros Voltron commanders can use this, like, okay, that's a very narrow slice for your chase mythic, right? So they just be like one ring, everyone can use it, go at it, right? So that I think is the Hasbro answer to all of this, right?
I don't think they do it intentionally, honestly, or at least in this card, because I asked a commander designer. I don't think they worked on this card, by the way, but I asked them their opinion on it because I was like, is this a mistake or anything? And they're like, it's more powerful in high-powered tables, and that's okay with us. And at lower-powered tables, it's not as effective. And I was like, okay, well, that's a good response, So
Wait,
They
for
didn't-
Trouble in Pairs? Is that even true?
Trouble in Pairs.
We play pretty We don't play CDH or anything, and it's pretty busted at our tables, does it?
But
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Low power
people sitting on like 30 lands, they can like barely play one spell a turn. Like,
Yeah, okay,
like,
yeah. I guess
I didn't agree.
you know what I mean? Like I can see it at lower power tables. It only draws like one a turn cycle or something, right?
Yeah.
Like people are not exploding out of the gates with ramp and then like double triple spelling immediately. So I could see that, right? All right, Seth, hit us
right.
with the mistake card of 2024.
I mean, it's an easy one. Someone had to put it on their list. I think literally everyone in Magic agrees this was not only a mistake card of 2024, but the mistake card of 2024, and that is Nadu Winged Wisdom. So Nadu is now thankfully banned in Commander. It lasted a good 3 months. Came out of Modern Horizons 3. 3 mana, 3/4 with flying. And creatures you control have, whenever it becomes a target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, it goes on the battlefield. Otherwise, it goes into your hand. The ability only triggers twice each turn. That's twice each turn for each creature. In Nadu, it's a mistake in so many reasons. You go back to the design stories of Nadu and how they changed it because they thought the initial version, which like gave all your stuff flash, like a ley line of anticipation in the command zone, was going to be too miserable or something for Commander. So I ended up changing it to the current version, which ended up being even more miserable in Commander, because not only is it very powerful, but the way that Nadu plays is just these endlessly long, non-deterministic combo turns where you just want to target your stuff and draw a bunch of cards and kind of see what happens, and eventually you might win the game, like somehow if things work out 20 minutes later. So it lasted about 3 months. Everyone hated it, and it's just a historic mistake card, right? I feel like this is one of the biggest mistake cards in several years in Commander. Like, we haven't seen a legend this busted in a long, long time. And I will say at least they did the right thing, and they banned it fairly quickly, which does help minimize the impact of the mistake. So I think, given the circumstances, they did the best they could as far as the Commander banning. I think they banned it relatively fast. But still, it's wild that this card ever was even printed.
This is the biggest mistake of this year. I don't think this. Again, I don't think many cards are all that problematic, but this card right here is a huge problem. But I guess I don't know, the play pattern, like you had mentioned, was really rough, but I guess it comes with the nature of it being one in Simic. In history, and like in the last couple of years, I'm just saying, the worst cards of each year, one in Simic. All right. Now, if I want to just think about, like, if we compare this to, like, do you think this is worse than Oko? Worse than Uro?
In 1v1.
For Commander, yes. I think this had a
Okay.
bigger negative impact on Commander. In 1v1, then we'd have an argument. It might not have been as bad as Oko overall, I guess, because Oko was like in Standard and stuff. But I think in Commander, this was worse than either of those cards. I don't even really mind Oko in Commander or Uro in Commander. They're kind of like fine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, maybe in Commander, like, this Azure Commander is pretty nuts, right? So,
Yeah.
like, that's fair. But I guess, like, design-wise, I'm speaking, like, design-wise,
yeah.
I feel like of the 3 cards mentioned, this one, like, in a just a general statement, didn't feel as bad as the other 2, but the other 2 are, like, goats, right? Like, we're talking,
Yeah.
like, the greatest. So, if you fall somewhere short of Oko, to me, you're obviously a busted card. And, yeah, I don't know. I think this card, you know, like, hey, you know, I applaud you for innovating and trying, but most importantly, I applaud you for getting it out of here immediately.
I think it's actually worse than Oko in 1v1, not power-wise, but just how bad gameplay-wise it is.
Yeah.
Because the Nadu player, to actually win the game, it's non-deterministic. They can always fizzle out. So you're basically forced there to watch them for 5, maybe even longer minutes, just watching them, like, just, you know, put the Shuko on the thing, and oh, did I trigger this twice already? I don't remember. Oh, let's run it back a little bit. And then, like, just the gameplay experience of it is even more miserable than Oko, because at least when you see Oko's like at like 7 loyalty or something and you have no attackers against them, you're like, oh, I guess I could scoop it up. Like, I don't have any outs to this. It's too late.
I mean, yeah, Oko does finish the job, right? That's the difference. But, like, I want to let you know that Oko gave you the illusion that you're playing Magic, and then it gets elked, right? This is just outright, like, okay, I think they're about on the same rate. You're both not playing Magic, one way or the other.
So at least you're participating.
Caught a lot of strays from 60 cards. Like, yes, it should never have been printed, But I am pretty sure if this card did not see modern play and like upset the whole modern format, Commander players wouldn't be talking as much about this card, right? Like, was this CDH viable?
What?
Did it dominate the CDH metagame? Because this would be the same as if I took my CDH partner pair into casual and like pub stomped everyone. Like, yes, it's powerful, but it's like, is it any more powerful than playing random CDH partners? Right. So I feel a lot of the narrative was the fact that it kind of like raffle stomped modern. And then we're like, well, yeah, you can do the same thing in Commander. But like in actuality, how many people actually did this? And was it actually a problem? And I don't know, but I'm not sad for it to go. Like, it wasn't really a play style you wanted to preserve, right? There's no point in
Yeah.
keeping it around. But I do feel a lot of the narrative is around 60 card, and as evidenced by the fact that we're talking about Oko and Uro and things in this conversation, those things never were really a problem in Commander, right? These are all kind of 1v1 problems, right? So caught some strays from the rest of the Magic sphere, I think, but we don't need the bird. We don't need the bird.
I think it's just
I
like
thought
you
I
lump
could
it
have
with
sworn
Turgid,
it was
right?
the
Like, nobody
inverse,
played that.
right? I think that was the inverse with Oko. Or, I mean, with Nadu. At spoiler season, I think everybody immediately talked about like, this is busted, right? This is gonna go off with Lightning Greaves, and I think that
but so do all the CDH commanders and like Storm and other, there's other cards that like go off hard too, but they don't dominate 60 card formats while doing it, right? So I think that's the difference, right?
I think to me, it's like Paradox Engine, I think is the best Commander comparison. Like, yes, I agree that 60 card format's probably played into the narrative, but it's a card that you see it and you're like, oh, that's cool. It kind of like protects my creatures and it draws some cards. And then you throw it in your deck. And next thing you know, you draw your Lightning Greaves and you're in a 20-minute turn and everyone's miserable. Kind of like you jam your Paradox Engine for like ramp because it's going to untap my mana rocks. And next thing you know, you're accidentally in this 20-minute loop. So I feel like it's kind of deceptive in that way where it like tricks Commander players into thinking, oh, it'll be fine in my 99 or whatever. And then it still just leads to a bad play experience when it shows up.
I
Yeah,
think it
like
would have ended up like Turgid, where like people understood like this is not for like your typical casual night. Like, I do agree that it is bad because it was a new set and it looks like a very fun card, right? Like, it's very easy for people to look at this card and be like, as opposed to Turgid, where it's like, oh, I have to make people discard, and this doesn't seem so great. Now it's just like, oh, I get to ramp and draw cards. I love ramping and drawing cards. What's wrong with this? So I think it's probably a little bit more likely that new players would assemble this deck and then go over to the LGS, stomp the table, and be like, oh, this deck is too strong. I'm going to take it apart or save it for later, but I wasted all this money on this, and that sucks. But yeah, I do think it would have eventually, after a year or so, people would just know you just play it at CDH tables, and that's it.
All right, Krim, hit us with a card.
Yo, again, I this is gonna sound weird. All right. So bear with me here. Bloodthirsty Conqueror. Okay. So
Have
it's
you
from
been dying in
Foundation
Standard, Krim?
3.
What's going on?
No. Let me. Okay.
I beat him with it
cook
within
for a
limited
second.
one
Let me
time.
cook for a second here. 3 black, right? And it's a creature 5/5, whatever. Flying death, yeah, whatever. Whenever an opponent loses life, gain that much life. We've seen this effect before, right? We've seen it again, and we've seen it again, and we've seen it again. My issue is not directly Bloodthirsty Conqueror, but more so the fact that its effect, there's so many of these effects in Commander that I feel there's just the combo, this life, I lose life, then, I gain life, and then I go infinite because you lose life and you die. This combo now is so dominant in black-based decks, and I think that this card being added to its pool means that there's so much redundancy to that combo, right? And there's so much of it that every deck, I feel, can now just play this combo. And it's just like the black card, like the black combo to have in every black deck. And so I guess my issue with this is not so much the card itself, but the idea that this card got released, because now we're just kind of always going to have that annoying aristocrat like sub package, and there's always going to be the combo in there. And I think every deck in black will just eventually play the combo, because you had Enduring Tenacity, you had this, you just have a lot of just redundancy in this style of effect, and I just don't like that. I don't like that there's this combo that is just so easily replicated.
I feel like
Isn't this the second Exquisite Blood? I think there's only 2 that exist.
But the thing is, if you get to keep having these and they're gonna keep doing this, I do not like that. I think that's a problem.
I think I agree with that mostly, and I think we're going to see more of it because I think take this iconic, powerful ability from an enchantment or artifact of the past and stick it on a creature is a really easy way to like design a popular card, especially when you've been designing Magic for 30 years and like all the like super clean and easy, like put a line of text on something abilities have pretty much been done somewhere before. So I think we're going to see more and more redundancy on cards like this in the future, almost like by default, right? Just because how many different abilities are there that you can put on a Magic card. So I think we're going to see a lot of like twists on old abilities on a creature this time or on an artifact instead of an enchantment. So I think this is I don't know if this card to me is a deal breaker right now, but I see what you're saying where if this keeps happening, we could end up in a pretty bad place in the future.
Yeah,
If you
like
have,
that,
like-
it's the Magus argument, right? Like, okay, so you have Magus of the Moon, which and you also have Blood Moon, and then eventually you'll have, I don't know, Tomato of the Moon, and then you're just gonna keep having of the Moon, right? And then eventually there's just 19 Blood Moon effects.
Yeah.
And just like that, I worry about this, and I get it, you know, we're not only designing for Commander. This was meant to have the combo in Standard, but this is where Commander kind of takes the strays, right? Because you're going to see a lot of these, and you know they're going to want to reprint a lot of these. So I hope we don't see more of it, personally.
As the one guy who plays this card fairly, I actually like this card. I just put it in decks for life gain, right? Like, it's like Omega Lifelink, right? Like, you just play it down, hit someone for 20, gain 20, call it a day. I play it like that. I think it's great. So I would play that over the enchantment, right? Because the enchantment is going to give me a body to smack someone with. But I do see what you're saying where you hit critical mass of unfun combos. Like if it's a one of in the format, it's fine. But if there's like so many ways to do it, but this is just 2025 design. Like we have 18,000 effects of everything. Like how many rampant growths do we have?
Yeah.
Right? Like how many sign-in bloods? How many divinations do we have? How many explosive vegetations we have, right? And we're just gonna keep getting them more and more. And then eventually it's 100 card singleton, but not really, right? It's like you have 6 of every single card, you know, you need, and it's really just a 30 card deck or something, right? So I don't know how they fix it, but
I think, like, I don't know. I honestly didn't even consider this card because, like, usually, like, when I'm building decks, I'm like looking for synergies and stuff. I wouldn't just like, jam like an infinite life loss combo of Bloodthirsty Conqueror and whatever combos of it, just into like, I don't know, insert whatever mono black deck that doesn't care about life drain, you know, like Gix or something. But I could see if that becomes the norm, then yeah, that's not a desirable outcome for sure.
all right, I got a good mono black card for you guys. It's called Grievous Wounds, and I died to it on Clash, and it's not because that I died to it on Clash they're bringing it up, but 3 black, enchantment aura, enchant player. Enchanted player can't gain life. Oh my god, my Bloodthirsty Conqueror. Whenever enchanted player is dealt damage, they lose half their life, rounded up. Now, I don't know why Wizards printed a card that says like 5 mana, like target player loses the game, but they did, right? And I don't know why they would try to incentivize. I think I didn't even make 1 turn cycle before I just keeled over from Grievous Wounds, right? Because the first hit is, say you're at 40 life, right? The first hit is 20. It rounds up, by the way, right? Second hit is 10. You're at 10. So 2 pings at you and you're at 10 life. 5, 3, you're dead. I don't know why. And then it's kind of funny, right? Someone has a Grievous Wounds on them, and you like send in your bird and deal 20 to their face, right? And you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, why would they make a card that just makes someone like lose the game and like incentivize everyone else to like pitch in? Like it's such a dumb card. Why do they make these? Like, how is this a fun, sustainable play pattern? I don't understand. If it was like 5 mana win the game, I could kind of understand that. But to single someone out and have them just be murdered, and especially since it's an enchantment, like 2 colors can't deal with it cleanly. Like if you're a black player, like good luck, right? get your Withering Torment before you're dead, right? So
Wait, why isn't this a curse?
I feel, yeah, they
Well,
said curses are only on Innistrad, so they didn't want to make a curse on Dustborn.
it's not a curse,
Wizards'
Tomer. It's a
reason, yeah.
boon. You get to go eat lunch
It's-
because you immediately removed from the game.
I love this card. I didn't even think about this card.
This card is
before. Oh my God.
awesome.
That's so
As the
funny.
person who
Terrible.
casted it on Richard.
That's why I didn't see it. I wasn't there for it.
I think
Oh,
just
that's hilarious.
curses in general I don't like in Commander. Like, I feel like this is just the most extreme version of it, but like all the curses kind of point you at one person and say like,
Mhm.
keep beating that person until they die because you want to get a gold token, or you want to even like, I don't know, Overwhelming Splendor is just like, you humility one person at the table and everyone else is fine. Like, all of the curses kind of have the issue that they just like single out one person. And if they only worked on like the arch enemy or something, maybe it'd be fine and you could use it as a way to like get the rest of the table to catch up. But when it comes to a lot of these cards, like Curse of Opulence, the incentive is still there when the person's at like 3 life to keep attacking them because you're going to get that gold token. So I feel like just, I don't really like how curses in general play in a 4-player format. So, and I think this is like one of the most extreme versions of that effect.
Are you all mad about Doomblades? Because this is essentially just Doomblading. This is single targets. The like, sorry, Doomblade may be the wrong.
Player.
I'm Doomblading a player, yes, but the thing is, it is a single target, right? It is so narrow. It's you are targeting one person. That person, yes, they will not be happy with you. But the thing is, and no, there's 2 other players that will not care. They will like, either A, they will benefit from it, or they will just comically laugh as they also decrease your life by half, right?
Well, how is this net fun though? Like I don't like I get that it's not like super OP, you know what I mean? Like, but why would you sit at the table and someone can slap this on you very early, right? Turn 3,
Yes.
turn 4, before
For
you've
sure.
even dug for an answer to get rid of this thing. And then you just die. And then you're like, well, that was a great game of Magic the Gathering, guys. And now it's a 3-person pod. Like, how is this
Richard,
furthering
what do you
fun?
think?
I'm very
You have clearly done something, right? Because like when someone hexes or curses you, right?
Yeah.
That is a deep feeling. So,
No, it's not
No.
because it goes so early. If this was like like 12 mana or something, okay, you know, someone could die, right? But this comes down so early that
No,
you
that's
probably even
5
haven't
mana.
like offended enough people to get a Grievous Wound on you yet,
And you
right?
have to hit them.
I don't know, Richard. Like, what?
Is this even
if
like?
you?
I don't
I
even
don't
know.
know.
If it's good though.
I
Like,
guarantee
okay, let's
you,
say-
if I jam Grievous Wounds every week, you guys kick me out of the pod like so fast.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, no,
like,
it'd be-
like,
it'd
you know
be
what I mean?
bad.
Like it is so.
But, like,
if you
I
thought
don't know.
if you thought Armageddon was unfun, oh boy, let me show you Grievous Wounds, right? Like
But okay, I'm just envisioning casting this. Let's say I ran Grievous Runes. I enchanted Richard, and I enchanted him early. I enchanted him like
Yeah.
turn 4 or something. I think what would happen actually at the table, especially if Richard's not the arch enemy, I just enchanted somebody. Everybody would be like, "Wow, why would you do that?" Everybody, let's attack Tomer, and then I just die. Like I don't see like Curse of
I mean,
Opulence.
the reality was I just died in 1 turn cycle.
Well, maybe Crypt
from
could get
a
away with it
healthy
because it's all
40,
scamp, but
right? Like you know,
I
like,
mean,
look,
it doesn't give you
I
a
died
treasure or
shockingly
anything.
fast to this, right?
The-
I didn't even have time to
Well,
think for it.
I
It's-
did have a Razorkin Needlehead, so keep that in mind. So you drew
that's
cards.
okay. That's good. But
you
like,
had
if
one
I
upkeep pinging card.
if I put a
Right?
Curse of Opulence on Richard, I think it would be different because then people would be like, "Well, I could
No,
kind
Curse
of
is
use
bad
the gold
too. Curse is very
token."
bad for the game.
But it's,
But,
but
like,
Tomer, it's
Here's
like
here's
my-
another card that's similar. Sorry,
What?
No,
I know Seth
go
can
ahead.
relate to this one. Ulamog the Defiler,
oh,
right?
yes.
Which like comes in with the Nihiler 8 billion, and it essentially says one person gets destroyed into the Shadow Realm, and then the rest of the game like kind of continues, right?
Mhm.
Like Wizards should print games
Dude,
that
it's a
win the card
mana.
on the spot rather than
Tomer,
reducing
It's
the
so
pod.
man.
Tomer, what they're talking about on this list is apparently deck lists I've played this season.
I'm getting an inkling to that.
We've had multiple Ulamogs. Is it always Crimp? It might have been always Crimp. We've had multiple Ulamogs though.
I Eldrazi'd like Seth twice in
Oh,
a season.
yes,
so-
you actually got me salty this. I don't get salty very much. That second time, I actually got a little salty for a second because boy, is it a brutal card. Like I don't like
brutal. It is brutal.
I don't like cards
don't
in
know.
Commander that just take one player out. I think when it comes down to it, because
Yeah.
you just have like this 2-hour game, and then everyone else keeps playing, and you got to sit there with the sad puppy dog eyes, and it's like it's just like doesn't feel good. So I think any card that just like one shots one player, I'm kind of skeptical. Early
right?
in the
If
game,
it's
man, I'm
turn
kinda
10
skeptical.
and you kill someone, then by all
I don't-
which theoretically Ulamog is a 10 drop, but you know,
It's a 10
probably you power this baby out like real fast, right? But if it's
Wait,
turn
okay.
4 and you remove someone from the game, that feels scuffed, right? That
I
feels
don't-
scuffed.
I'm actually gonna take the Richard approach here, where I feel like these cards are very scary, and I feel like if you're running them, you either need to finish the job immediately, or the entire table is just gonna turn against you. Like even the Grievous Wound. Like if I just like Grievous Wound Richard out of nowhere, he's not the arch enemy or anything. Early on in the game, and I start swinging at him, I feel like the rest of the table will not be backing me up on this. I think they'll
Why?
just take me
They're
out.
not affected by the Grievous Wound. You're not actually any scary.
they're not-
You did not actually become arch enemy. Like
There's-
I will be mad.
But they're
at
not
you.
incentivized.
There
They're not
is
incentivized to
incentive,
hit you.
Tomer. There is, because the incentive is my 1-drop, my 1/1 can deal 20 damage this turn. Why would I send my 1-drop at Crim to deal a single damage if I send it at Richard and deal 20 damage with that same creature?
Exactly.
So the
Because
thing,
then
there
you'll
is
feel
a
bad. I feel like if I was the one doing this, I would just die. I would cast it on Richard. Everybody would be against me just because I did that. Like Richard would be like, "Why would you do this?" Everybody would hate me for it, and I just
think
die.
about it. You have a 1-drop that can hit Tomer. Tomer's giving you the puppy eyes, but it does 20 to him, or it does 1 damage to Crim. Who are you gonna hit? No matter how
I
big
don't-
those puppy eyes are, you're getting
I would
it.
hope. I would hope that it would work. I don't think it would. Though. I don't know. I'm skeptical.
Anyway, that's
I
my
know
TLDR,
you don't
though.
like
cards. Cards that kill
I
one,
know.
and I would say this even if I didn't get cursed. I know people are gonna be like, "Well, you died, Richard," but I'm like, no, right? Like, I don't play Curse of Opulence. I don't play these that often because it just looks miserable to be the person singled out of the game and not be allowed to play at such an early stage, right? So I don't like those, and that's why we spread the love, right? We don't typically just like stack up the Voltron onto one guy and take him out at turn 3, right? And this kind of like does that
What was-
inherently, right?
What was our podcast, Richard? Don't be afraid to end the game, you know? And that includes maybe
but
for
I don't
one
know what
person.
this is, right? I don't know what
This-
this is.
you're ending the-
this is
Curses
This is
It's like
player
an
mod,
arch enemy
right?
I'm
kill.
sorry.
Like I think
I
this
think
is like
curses
somebody's an arch
bring-
enemy. You curse them, you kill them. Like I don't think you just throw this out willy nilly. I think
you
this is an
can't
arch
throw it
enemy
out, though.
balancer. But I don't think it's
So if
correct
this
to
was
do
10 mana, maybe we talking about arch enemy.
No.
Maybe that's too much. 7, 8.
Ah.
No, I think 5 is Richard, okay. I think curses are brilliant in Commander because it's the perfect spell for the person that's wronged you last. Right? And it has to be something because in a game that is like there's politics elements to Commander, right? And in that, the person wronged you last definitely deserves a Grievous Wound.
I'm pretty sure I did no wrongs to you that game. It's just you have to curse someone and you're gonna cast it, right?
Okay,
So you
I'll
just
play-
choose someone.
I'll play.
Well, of course I'm
I'll
gonna choose
play it.
Kona,
I'll
the one
try
that
running
might
it.
have
I'll see how it
Eldrazi.
goes.
It's
gonna
like
try
would
running
you,
and
would
see how
you
it
fire a 3-player pod or would you wait 10 more minutes for a 4th person to show up? I feel most people wait for the 4th, right? But
You
this
gotta wait.
card, this card kind of just like makes a 3-player pod, right? So it's weird. But anyway, Seth,
All right,
hit us with the card.
I'm going back to the beginning of the year for this one, and I think the angst about this card has died down a little bit since right after it released, but I still think it was pretty much a mistake card, and that is Voja, Jaws of the Conclave. So, Voja, it is a 5-mana 5/5 Naya Legendary Wolf. It has Vigilance, Trample, in Ward 3, and then when it attacks, you put X counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of elves you control, and then you draw a card for each wolf you control. So Voja, it's supposed to be like an elf commander, right? And it is an elf commander, but it is a really, and technically, I guess, sort of a wolf commander. I think most commonly it's played as an elf commander, but you can't play wolves with it too, or toss some wolves in your elf deck. The problem with Voja is essentially the ward cost. It's a really snowbally card that can essentially win the game in a single attack. Like, if you can get in one attack with this, assuming no one board wipes, you're going to generate this insurmountable board. You're going to draw a new handful of cards. It's going to be really, really strong. And because it's an elf commander, elves is always playing all these mana dorks. So you can usually get this down ahead of curve, where Ward 3 is actually kind of like almost hexproof if you can get this down early enough in the game, because your opponents aren't going to have enough mana to actually pay for that ward cost. So putting that ward on this snowbally commander, it leads to this really unfun play experience where it's kind of like you have this must-kill commander, but then you can't kill it because of the ward, so it just makes it feel bad. And then the other thing I dislike about this is it made people really hate Ward. And I think Ward is actually like a super positive ability compared to like Hexproof. And I want Wizards to be able to like make Ward cards. And I hope that they don't take the message from people being mad about Voja, like, oh, we need to get rid of Ward. Because I think the issue is like you made the super snowbally commander with too high of a Ward cause. Not that Ward itself is a bad mechanic, because I think the Ward is actually like a pretty healthy way to be able to protect creatures if you like get the numbers right and dial it in right. So, but Voja, definitely one of the most hated commanders from this year, I think.
I can clarify on the Ward too for Wizards of the Coast. Gavin did a video on Ward, and he said going forward for designing around Ward, they'll be using 1 a lot, 2 a lot, 3 very rarely, and then beyond that, it's essentially hexproof.
Sacrifice 2 permanents all the time.
Well, yeah, I actually like,
Sack all
I
your
like
land.
unique Ward effects too. I think those are really cool design spaces. But yeah, it needs to be. I feel like just slapping Ward 3 on this was a mistake. I think
Yeah.
Ward 2 or Ward 1 would have been fine. Ward 3 is all excessive. Like when you're paying 4 mana for Swords of Plowshares, even if you have the mana for it, then somebody has to take their entire turn off to prevent the rest of the table from dying immediately, which is kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know, this just kind of sucks.
I mean, the thing is that it's in elves, right? It's the archetype that can cheat this out, like Seth had mentioned. That's the biggest issue that is with this. If this were just a Naya, I don't know, good stuff commander, sure, whatever, 5 mana, but it specifically rewards you for playing with elves. But do I think this card's actually that big a deal? Dude, just void rend it. I don't. I'm just, all right. Okay.
I agree with Krim, actually. Phil played this, and I'm pretty sure he did diddly squat because we board wiped him, and then board wiped him a second time, and that was done. So
Yeah,
it's not really the board that's egregious to me. It's really like you get one good attack in with this, you snowball like to infinity, as opposed to the ward, right? So like if you don't have the void red, the swords, or the sweeper, like you guys are dead, right? So like that's kind of the problem with the card, and it's not the ward in my opinion. It's really just like I attack, I win kind of deal.
It is.
But it's
funny.
not just Elf Ball, right? Like I think the thing here is everybody's complaining about this, but this is just Elf Ball. This is just what Elf Ball does all the time. So to me, I just see it as nothing more than the same Elf Ball that has been killing me. If you don't have the sweeper, we're all dead. Simple as that.
I think like the thing with I've seen obviously for Clash and stuff, and I've seen it in my own group too. My own group also believes heavily on board wipes, so I just don't think it's a very good meta for Voja. Like I've seen it play like 4 times. One time it popped off and we all died. Just nobody had a board wipe or anything. And the other times, we just board wiped and that player just basically got no opportunity to play the game. And good Voja decks, obviously, you have access to white. You have T-Pro, Clever Concealment. You have a bunch of like things to protect against board wipes here in red, so you can give Voja haste before even casting it and stuff. So Toon Voja lists are still going to be very scary, even in my personal play group. But like, I think this is the biggest problem in tables that don't really run a lot of interaction. And I actually did a Twitter poll last week asking how many board wipes most people run on who follow me on Twitter. And the majority of people said 1 to 2.
Yeah.
And then when I looked at the comments, it was mostly 1, a single board wipe. And in those metas, Voja's going to just, like Elf Ball in general, like it doesn't have to be Voja, it could be any Elf Ball deck. They're just going to stomp. Like a Elf Ball has to be answered with board wipes, or else the Elf Ball deck will win. Like I think it's very cut and dry. And if you have Voja at your play group, you got to run more board wipes. Everybody has to collectively run like just 3 to 4 board wipes, everybody, and then you're fine. I think.
Agreed on 9. If you have 9 board wipes, Voja, you won't. That's a vanilla card. If you have a 9 board
like
wipe,
one board wipe collectively amongst the 3 other people, like that's not enough. I'm sorry.
I think that's how most people play Commander, though, and your pullback set up. So the anger that people had about Voja made sense to me. Yeah, maybe it's not that great in our meta because we believe in a lot of board wipes, and then our boards are getting wrath all the time. But in a meta where everyone's playing one Wrath, I could see how this would be a very frustrating card. If you're sitting there with a handful of Swords to Plowshares and Ponkifies, and this comes down on turn 3, and you're just like, this is all useless. Like, what am I doing with my
imagine
life?
no interaction. You just have like 0 swords, 0 Ponkifies, no board life.
interaction.
Just like-
Yeah, swords is only 4 mana to get rid of this, right? It's not the end of the world, but
Yeah, but also our meta, we don't even run swords. We run like Generous Gifts. So that's 6
Oh.
mana. 6 mana
Infinite.
to kill Voja. That's not happening.
You gotta have the
Well,
boyfriend.
that's weird.
Zero.
You know, it's almost like your boys got edicts. You know, it's almost like your
the
boys
edicts are
got
gonna be very effective against those elves.
Elf ball, yeah.
Hey,
Tomer.
Rot Out and Soul Shatter. Take
Soul
the
Shatter.
hot.
Soul Shatter's the truth. Tomer, what do you got for us?
Okay, can I just say all of Modern Horizons 3? Just all
Yes.
of it. I think it's like
You can.
Give us a
I think
summary of what was included in Modern Horizons 3.
so Modern Horizons 3 was made for Modern, but it was really made for us Commander players. As the advertising that I got specifically told me, Modern Commander players, check out Modern Horizons 3. And we also even got precons of Modern Horizons 3, not modern precons. Heck no, that would be silly. No, we got Commander precons of Modern Horizons 3. It's great. So we got a lot of staples, Nadu being one of them. Richard also touched upon non-basic lanes. Every single one he mentioned, by the way, was a Modern Horizons 3 non-basic, the Shifting Woodland and Co., Talon Gates of Madara. But I would just say the entire set is like, just like, I'm okay with power creep. That's incremental. I feel like that's kind of inevitable to happen. But this is like intentionally just upping the bar. And I felt like that's just a net negative for not only Modern. I think everybody has agreed at this point that Modern got a little bit worse with Modern Horizons 3. Maybe
A lot
they kind of
worse.
just a
they
hair.
turn into the entire pitch of Modern at the beginning, at least according to the developers, was the place where you can keep playing your decks and they're not rotating, an eternal format, if you will. And now it's literally just rotates with every single Modern set. And hopefully this will be the last time it fully rotates, but I don't think
Nope.
after the sales of Modern
Yeah.
Horizons 3 that's not going to be the case. But anyways, for Commander players, it's incredibly relevant because guess what? We got a lot of staples from Modern Horizons 3. And one that I play a lot are basically all the MDFCs from Modern Horizons 3. Those are the cards that I run the most from the set. And there's a lot of cards I run from the set, but those are the ones I run the most. So for example, Sink into Stupor is one of the MDFCs that we got, the new ones. On the front side, it's an instant that 3 mana blue. Return target spell or non-land permanent opponent controls to its owner's hand. And on the back side, it's a land that's tasked for blue, but you can also pay 3 mana to have it enter the battlefield untapped. Unlike the previous set of MDFCs, where if you had like just like the lands that the non-rare lands, they would enter the battlefield tapped always. And that was the drawback behind it. Is like you're gonna have a tap land always. This one doesn't have that. You pay 3 life and they're untapped even for you. And on the front side, a lot of them are like very well costed, even better costed than the original MDFCs we got. Like Sink into Super, returning a spell or non-land permanent to their control to their soldier's hand. That's like maybe like 2.5 mana, you know? Like it's like barely more mana than what a regular spell would cost. And then the backside's also land. So what I've been noticing is literally all my decks that are like 1 color, 2 color, 3 color. I've even been considering like 4 and 5 are running MDFCs now because it's like there's no build it around requirement to it. Like obviously they get better in certain shells, but like all my decks can benefit from them. They enter as untapped lands. So it's just like all of a sudden, like an Arcane Signet or whatever, or a Soul Ring, all of a sudden all my decks suddenly just have less slots. Like these are just no-brainers. And I really don't like that. I don't like just like every single deck just having auto includes in them. I think that's really bad design. And as much as I enjoy putting them on all my decks because, oh my god, they're so good, I don't think it's healthy for the format to have just auto includes in all my decks. But what do you guys think? I know this is divisive.
It's funny. For me, I agree with the auto include thing, but for me, something like Trouble in Pairs is more problematic on that end because MDFCs are replacing a land for me. So for some reason, if I'm dropping an island to place Link into Stupor, I feel like I'm not really reducing the number of slots in my deck because I'm giving up what was already a useless slot anyway, just like this boring land that has no meaning to my game plan. And I'm getting something out of it, which is like a little bit more removal. I know floodgates, but sorry, floodgate players. I know. I didn't mean to bash your islands, but seriously, I think that I like these still. Like, I get what you're saying about the auto includes, but I like that it lets me play more lands and makes my game plan a little bit smoother. So I'm still team MDFC. Although I agree to your larger point about Modern Horizons 3 in general. Last week when we talked about the strongest cards of the year, I went back and counted. We had 20 cards. 13 were from Modern Horizons 3, and there were a lot of sets last year, and that was counting all the MDFCs as one. If we actually listed out all the MDFCs, it would have been like 75% of our top cards would have come from this one set. So I think Modern Horizons 3 definitely was way overpowered, way too overpowered.
I mean, yeah, one of the cards on my list is from that, and then on top of that, I think on the topic of MDFCs, normally it is frowned. Like, it's not great to see that, every deck will just play a certain set of cards, right? But if it makes it so commander players play more lands, and that now when we get flooded, like
No.
it counts as a land to me. So like
Play 31
guess
lands, but 8 of them are MDFCs now.
I'll
They
take
don't go to 50
that-
lands like Seth, right? They don't do
If
that.
people actually use
But
this to put
that's-
more lands in their decks, I will take this. You know what? I'll be like, yeah, power creep MDFCs. Let's get people to like that 38 land count.
Ooh,
I mean,
44.
I think it adds a lot to the design space and the play space, right? Like, just because, okay, one of my lands, yes, normally I am a 38, like maybe 40 land deck, right? But now 8 of them, I have to figure out if I'm actually going to use them as a land or not. But the nice thing is, it kind of makes it so if I flood out, I don't just sit there. So I kind of like this is where I don't think power creep is bad, right? I think power creep is okay here. And I think that it's okay to have like this uniform, like kind of set up a batch of cards that most people might play, right? Like if everybody has a Sink and a Stupor, that's pretty cool in my opinion. And it's not like, oh, everybody's like playing, some kind of absurd combo. So I think MDFCs are fine.
So when this was originally spoiled, I thought it was like the apocalypse, right? Because we were coming off the last batch of MDFCs, which were like basically on like Seagate Restoration, on Dune version. I'm like, your deck is just going to be all MDFCs. In reality, I only play like 2 or 3 of these all the time. And the subsequent power creep of land, so Shifting Woodland, Arena of Glory, Urza's Cave, like those took up all my MDFC slots, right? Like if I'm like, what has more power, right? Playing some random like jank MDFC or Shifting Woodland comes in. Arena of Glory comes in. So, and then, I have to have enough room for like, a certain number of basics and color fixing and stuff like that, right? So there's so much power creep that the MDFCs have kind of been power crept out. Like, I don't know how
No
Seth
way.
is fitting like so many of these in.
No
But
way.
like to get an appropriate number of like fetches, basics, because it's like Vesuva, Thespian Stage, Reliquary Tower, Shifting Woodland, Arena of Glory, Sunken Palace, Mystic Sanctuary. Like I don't have any slots left, right? So it has to be like really, really strong, right? So
You don't put
it
Witch
somehow
Enchanter
worked
in all
itself
your
out,
white
I think.
decks?
Which one?
You don't put Witch Enchanter in all
Nope.
your white decks. You don't put
Do
Sink
not.
and the Stupor in all your blue decks.
I do not actually. So the ones I
Ooh,
actually
see.
play a lot are Pinnacle
How?
Monk, Sundering
Yeah.
Eruption, and then Disciple Frailes sometimes. But I don't
like
put Witch
those.
Enchanter because I need the planes. I need to get enough planes in my deck. And then I have the other utilities, right? Sink and a Super, I need my island synergies, Tomer. Like I'm barely scraping by
No, because
as is.
We're like so similar yet so different because like I will not run Reliquary Tower. I won't like if it's a colorless land, if it taps for colorless, I'm like, get out of here. If it enters the battlefield tapped, I'm like, no, thank you. And that's why I go to these. I'm like, these are auto includes. They tap for colored mana and they enter the battlefield untapped. And then so at that point they're already just very good lands. I'm gonna run those instead of like the other ones that Richard likes. So we have like the same complaints, but we come from different angles entirely.
Like there's Onawaru, there's Mystic Sanctuary, like there's like so
like that.
many things that are competing that I don't know how you guys fit them all in, right? Like you got to make cuts somewhere. So
Basics.
MDFCs are just fine.
Basics.
I mean,
Check
I
out
already
some
play a
basics.
shady number of basics, not as much as Seth, right? But it's already like my surveyor scope is sweating. If I draw 2 basics, like my whole game plan is ruined, right? So
mean,
It's
I
it's
think
it's
you
rough.
kinda-
There's so much power creep here.
I think Seth and Krim definitely made me a little bit softer on these. Like I think like if this is going to get people to play more lands and stuff, I think that's really good. And if it's just like taking out a
Have you guys
basic,
played more lands? I know Seth has attempted like
I
the
have.
44 land deck.
Yes.
Have you guys actually played more lands?
I was a 38 believer, and now I'm usually around 40.
So two
because
more.
but I count these as land drops. I will say like it's not like half a land or something. Like this is like straight up a witch enchanter for example. Venom to the battlefield untapped every single time. Even the dual ones too, and I run the dual ones too. And I also like the green ones, which you guys hate, like Bridgewick's
Yeah.
Battle, Step Stomp. I love those. Oh, they're so
In my
good.
Wolverine
Oh
deck,
my
that's great.
god.
No, it's all my decks, all my green decks. They're like they have creatures. I will fight your smaller creatures. I'm very happy. Legion
Sure.
leadership, double the power, first strike. Yeah, Heck yeah.
But what about McKindy Stampede? Are you on
Oh,
that yet? 'Cause
No.
I actually
boy,
played it
I'm
sometimes.
playing those.
No,
Sometimes
but
I
that
play
card-
mine.
That is just
That card
fab.
is
What are you
sick.
talking about? No.
That card is sick, dude. It's worth it.
Okay. Krim, bring us home. What do we have?
All right, so we talked about lands a lot this year, and Richard, I do really agree with your sentiment from earlier about how the lands are just too busted. And once again, I think probably my most hated card is a card that I also play. It's Fomori Vault. And for those that don't know what Fomori Vault is, it's a land, and it was from the Big Score,
yeah.
sheet,
Mhm.
right? Okay, yeah. It's from the
Which
Big
set is the big
Score.
score from? Outlaws?
Outlaws.
Outlaws.
Outlaws,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
It used to be
Outlaws.
it was going to be its own set, and then they were like, "Oh, Aftermath did very badly." It was going to be another.
Aftermath is
Aftermath.
a poo-poo. That's a
Yeah.
poo-poo. But this
They're like,
this
"Oh,
thing-
just shove it into OTJ." It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, like, look, honestly, LTJ was a banger set because of that. But Fomori Vault, land, adds a colorless, great. Why does it add colorless? Because it has to do something specific. Okay, well, this giant boba wad that is in the center of the plane, it spends 3 mana. You can spend 3, whatever, generic, and tap it. Discard a card. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This, in an artifact deck, I have found in the current year, is absolutely absurd. I play this card in my Iron Man deck. I play it in all sorts, any artifact deck. I have this in there. And like when I was on the Shuffle Up with Moist and Prof, this land just absolutely goes hard. Every time. Every deck that can use artifacts should play this. And I think the main reason is that it's almost like a free tutor. It's like a free tutor on your land every turn. And oh no, I have to discard a card. It's not like artifacts can't reoccur that with all 30 different, I don't know, scrap trawlers that they have, right? So I think this card has kind of just gone right by. Like, yeah, people acknowledge it's a sweet card, but they do not realize how busted this card actually is. And I forgot how busted it is. And like, I play the card. And every time I activate, I'm like, yo, this is nuts. How is this like a thing?
Yeah, Fomori Vault's absolutely. I haven't played it too much in Commander just because I haven't played too many artifact decks. But I played it in other formats, and the card's so incredibly busted. And I don't know if artifact decks really need the power boost, right? Like, out of all the archetypes, artifact decks already kind of doing okay in Commander, so I don't know if they are the archetype that needs this, like, repeatable land tutor.
But they can. That's the thing. It's any one of their lands.
Oh, it's so,
Like, I
yeah.
guarantee you this is better than almost like, I would say 99.9% of the lands in their deck. Like, I think that it is going to be better, and it is worth the downside of the colorless. It is such
How much
a
is it?
powerful effect.
It's $11. I have a 3-color Jeskai artifact deck, and I think I passed over it because it was a lot of money, and also I'm 3 colors, so it's tasked for colorless.
If you're an artifact deck,
It
then
comes
a
with,
lot of
yeah,
your cards are
treasures,
probably
man.
colorless, and you have treasures.
No, I only have one. I only have 2 colorless lands in my entire deck: Darksteel Citadel and Treasure Vault. Maybe I
This is
take
better
one out
than-
for that.
than-
This is
This
better
is
than
better.
both of those.
But it's
I
not an
actually love
artifact itself. It's not an
Is-
artifact, you guys.
Is this the best artifact utility land then? I was just trying to think about that, and it probably is. Like, I think if you're building an artifact deck, this might be the #1 non-basic to add.
every
Fucking
artifact deck you play, this is land number 1. I think this is like
Temple of the False God,
argue-
like literally anything.
It lowers my
how do you
artifact count.
compare this to Inventor's Fair though? So Inventor's Fair is like Metalcraft and then tutor out of your deck. Do you play
You have to
both? Do you think this
sacrifice
is
the
better?
land.
You do have to
That's that
sack
land
it.
from
Yes.
Iron Man, right?
From Iron Man.
Maybe. Yes,
It
was
is,
it an
right?
Iron
It is an
Man?
Iron
Yeah,
Man.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
But so it's 5 mana total. It's 4 and tap it and sacrifice it.
Yeah, but it's
this is
searchable
one-
deck. This is
It
is
is.
search
Yeah.
the top X.
and
Whatever,
that one
right?
passively also gains you life. You
Sure,
gain 1 life
passively
with
gains
gaining
you.
life.
Woo! All right, but like in reality, the fact that you have to spend 5 mana, you only get one thing. This is so much better than Inventor's Fair.
So you like this more than Inventor's Fair?
This is so much better than Inventor's Fair. Because you like, yes, technically if you get board wiped, okay, maybe this isn't that great, but like it's not exactly hard. Okay, if you can't rebuild, then it's over anyways, right? Like every artifact deck. This is only this card like almost locks it up and seals the deal for you. I if you're playing an artifact deck, this is land number 1. Inventor's Fair, yesterday's news. This is actually the best utility land, I think, in an artifact deck.
I'd agree with that. I would too. I
I'm
think
a little bit of a hater.
you
but I'll
really.
try it.
I think
I don't know that it's the best.
I don't
but-
you might
I
be
don't like
underestimating how many cards you see. Because my experience is in an artifact deck, you're so good at just spewing artifacts on the battlefield that a lot of times it's like pay 3, discard a card, tap this, look at 15 cards, and take your best card or something. Like you're digging pretty deep. So
Haven't
even though
you
you're not
won,
tutoring
though,
like
if you're sitting there
Inventor's
with
Fair,
15 artifacts, like I feel like you're doing this with like 3 or 4. If you somehow have 15, haven't
yeah,
you
but you
won?
got
Like you
mana
need the
rocks
Fomori
and
Vault
treasure
to close it out?
tokens and like all that
Yeah,
kind
you
of
have a
stuff floating
lot.
around. Like there's a lot of just like janky artifacts that sit on the battlefield that aren't doing much. Yeah.
Like
We'll have
to
your
try
opponents
it.
are going
I
to be
will
like, oh,
try it.
Iker Wellspring. We got to blow that up. Get it
Yeah.
out of here, right? Like, you know what I mean? So
Well, you're gonna catch strange from the Voja raft, right? Like someone's rafting the Volja player, and all your craft's going with it, right? And then you're like, wow,
you were dead anyways. and on the bright side, Tomer, you said your 2 lands that were artifacts, those get taken by the F word. So this actually is like, yo, hey, hold on.
I just auto lose the F word. I do. I run one. I run one answer to the F word. It's Mirror Shell Crab because it itself is also
Yeah.
an artifact. I've stopped it a
this
single
gets your
time, and I
Mirror
felt
Shell
like the
Crab.
king.
Dude, and if you think about how many ways you can untap your stuff in artifacts, like again, you got to remember, I'm talking about this from a lens as someone who hates artifact decks.
Yeah.
I
The more shocking
despise
news is
artifacts.
Krim plays artifacts decks in his free time. That's the more shocking news out of all of this.
Iron Man
Artifact decks did
making
nothing
me.
wrong. Okay, they're fine.
Iron Man has made me play artifacts, and Black Panther has made me play a lands deck. So I'm just letting you know that right now. Your boy in his off season he's been in the hyperbolic time chamber training.
Now that he plays legit strategies, he's unstoppable.
Hey,
If,
wait,
if
hold on.
Doctor Strange was
Hold
mono
on.
green, would you still
You've
play
learned
it,
how
Krim?
to make land drops and ramp. Oh boy, this is like
We're done.
If
We're
Doctor
done.
Strange
Just
is
took off
a
the ankle
mono
weights.
green landfall deck, would you play it, Krim? Would you build around it?
all right. So those
it.
are our mistake cards. Go 2024. Oh, we didn't even get to the flares. I guess we're just gonna lump that in with all of Modern Horizons 3. But the
I think
flares
they're
are
fine. That's actually one that I was like totally okay with.
The white flare is not
the white
fine, dude.
flare is not fine. The red
Yeah.
flare is not fine. You guys haven't seen me abuse
Red
it
Flare
enough.
is
The other
is
ones
so
are fine.
fine. I think they actually fixed free spell because like they're not free. You have to use another card, and you spent mana on that card already. I think they actually cracked it this time. I think they're actually good.
I think they're better,
let the
but I don't know
community say
about cracked it.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk about it a different time.
Let
I
the
think
you
it's
say that. I don't
good.
want more free spells. Soon enough, we will live everyone's dream of 0 lands.
But they're
Yeah.
not
Slinging free
free.
spells the entire game.
You had to give up another card, and
oh
you had
no,
to pay
I'm
mana
in
for that
mono
card.
white. I can't
Oh,
possibly
my
sack a
spirited
random
companion.
1/1 nonsense.
Oh.
Like,
No,
oh,
but
no.
they're the Spirit Companion mana. We're supposed to
You
try
would
good cards.
Okay, Richard,
don't
you
wanna
never sack
sacrifice.
that. You never sack Spirited Companion. That
Yeah,
is
that
All right,
Like-
Thraben Inspector.
That's
Thraben
no.
Inspector.
How are you gonna
Thraben-
sun
okay,
tighten
yeah,
it back,
that's fine.
Grim? How are you gonna
Yeah.
sun tighten it back?
I
Ooh,
would
a
sack
combo.
the Sun Titan before sacking the Spirited Companion.
That's true. So you can then get the Sun Titan back and then get the Spirited Companion with it on the trigger.
Sure, yeah.
All right. Those are our cards. Let us know if I'm sure we missed anything. There's a gigantic list in Modern Horizons 3. Let us know what you think are the mistake cards, or maybe maybe you're Crim. Maybe you think there are no mistakes, just happy little accidents that improve our game. So let us
I
know.
think Fomori Vault's a mistake.
No, I
All
want
right,
to
our
try it
back
before
hater.
you call it a mistake. That's fine.
Let us know in the comments, and we'll see y'all back here next week.